Welcome to another episode of So They Say. If you like the videos, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, and also if you can hit the subscription button, that'd be brilliant. Today we are looking at Tilbury Fire Station in Thurrock in Essex. It has a somewhat controversial history with some hazing that went on there. It was also very common in a lot of other fire stations, unfortunately, and I know that there are some local people that may not like this video, so I advise you not to watch it if you're affected by that at all. We're not going to cover that. We are going to cover the history and the ghost tales that remain within the building. And as we actually make this video, and today as we make the video, it's finally actually been demolished, so the building is no longer there. The building that was there until today was actually given permission in 1929, but it was actually built between 1931 and 1937, just in time for World War II, when obviously the docks got bombed quite heavily and all around Tilbury, so it was heavily used during that time. There's actually some photos of the Tilbury Fire Station with all the sandbags around the outside during the wartime. We know over the history of the Tilbury Fire Station, it stopped being used about 10 years ago and was then used as a community centre for Tilbury and for the wider area. It's also been used by faith groups and things like that, and education facilities. So in around about 2008, we was asked if Thurrock Paranormal at the time would like to go and do an investigation there. This was mainly on the background of a local fireman that had told me that he would never go back into the building because of some of the ghost stories and the things that he had actually seen there himself. So of course that sparked my interest, and I was more than excited to go down there and do an investigation. So we started looking at some of the history of the ghost stories, and this one I'm going to share with you today. One of the ghost stories that we have is actually from 1970. And it was actually a lady that passed out outside the fire station and was taken into the foyer and sadly passed away within there. Now we don't know why, but it seems that her spirit has carried on haunting that area of the fire station. Now what we do have, the firemen have gave her a name of Mrs. Martin. So if anything weird went on there, and they said, oh, that's Mrs. Martin doing that. So we had things sort of like items going missing around the fire station, and they'd always blame it on Mrs. Martin. One of the stories we have is a fireman that had come in the morning to get ready, and as he was over by the front entrance of the fire station, he felt a cold presence around himself, and he got the shivers. And as he turned round, he see a figure of this lady standing there, but not acknowledging him or anything like that. It was just a glimpse out of the corner of his eye sort of thing, but it gave him enough creeps that he went off and actually told one of his friends. They just said, oh, that's Mrs. Martin, you've met her now welcome to the fire station. Her ghost is also said to haunt this small office around the corner of the foyer, and so when people are in on their own, they often feel like a cold hand touching their back. One of the common local ghost stories about the Tilbury Fire Station is of an old watchman that always was seen with his dog, and people would say, even up until sort of recently, before this building was demolished, this could be going on once the new building's there, we don't know, that they see this old man walking around the outside of the building with a dog. And some of the firemen have also reported hearing a growl inside the building, like a dog growling inside the building. There's no dogs in there, but again, that was another common occurrence that happened with the firemen in there. Another reason why firemen didn't want to go back in there when it was empty. So I do know of one fireman that had left his PlayStation in that fire building and would not return to collect it unless he was with friends. One of the tragic stories we do have is of a fire officer who hung himself from the landing area in the corridor on the upper level of the fire station. Now he's said to have blamed himself for an incident that happened down the docks where two of his crew got killed, and he sort of come back, he couldn't cope with the depression and everything like that went along with that, and he committed suicide by hanging himself from the loft hatch. Now we did actually do an investigation there, and I know some people doubt all the equipment that people take on investigations, but we use an EMF register that we've been able to take the electromagnetic fields of that particular area. And what I can say is that in that spot where this gentleman had hung himself, the readings of the EMF were going up and down and really high, and it wasn't the same sort of like 2 meters away from it. It was a normal, you went to just under loft hatch and it was really high. I don't go on about spiritual mediums, but we do have them in our team at the time. and they didn't know nothing about it. And as our spiritualist medium was walking down the corridor, he stopped and said that he was feeling a dark energy right where it was, and was feeling a spirit's presence there. He happened to stop right underneath the loft hatch where the fire officer had hung the rope from. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but you know, those sort of things I'm open-minded about. One of the most common stories I got told about Tilbury Fire Station involved a young officer. He was coming down from the kitchen area with a tray of teas, and he was walking down the corridor. He see this lady come towards him, and all of a sudden he just thought it was someone coming into the office, and then he realised that he could sort of see through her. And as he looked down, the teas on his tray had disappeared. And you know, he was quite puzzled, but actually completely freaked out. He returned to the kitchen, and all the cups that he had just made the tea in had all been washed up and put back. Now, someone said that they believe that this is the ghost of a lady that used to help out in the fire station, that actually may be the same person who passed out outside the station that died within the station, you know, back in the 70s. I say, so there is some link. Now, we did some research on this, and I know that the fire officer, that event definitely happened. The lady outside that died definitely happened. And there was a watchman who did have a dog. So all these sort of things that we found the evidence of within through all the old newspapers in Thurrock Museum and that sort of stuff. And it was quite a difficult place to research the history of, because there's not much written about it. It was just a fire station, and you know, apart from the big role it played during World War II, there was no need to keep a record of it. As I say, later on it did hit the media with the tragic events, and you know, that went on in there with the hazing of firemen, and he was said to have left a really dark imprint on the place, that people would say they walked into the building and found it very unwelcoming. They didn't feel like they should be in there. They was quite happy to actually leave that place. During our investigation, we did actually film some what you call orbs or dust flying around in the rooms. There was one video clip of an orb that seemed to appear straight through the table, and also there was a lot of creaking going on the videos. Again, it's an old building, or was an old building, not historically old, but you know, temperature changing and all that, you can't rule out with things that creaked and moved about and all that sort of stuff. But it was an interesting building to investigate. And then we had the incident at the end of the investigation. Now, what we'd done, we'd all finished up the investigation around about 2 o'clock. There was a lady there with us from the fire station, or the community building as it was then, that showed us how to turn the lights off, and she actually stayed there. Now, it was on 2 different levels, so you had to go upstairs to turn the upstairs light off, and then you had to come downstairs to turn the dance floor lights off, and they couldn't really be controlled by both sets of lights. Now, we all know that we turned the upstairs light off, and then we come down and we turned the downstairs light off. We come out, we locked the building, we stood across the road and we was talking with the lady that had helped run the place with us, and the lights were off. The building was in pitch black. And then we looked back a split second later, and the lights on the top of the building were all on. And funny enough, we'd had a new member join the team at the time, and we volunteered him to go back in there and turn the lights off. But I cannot explain that, and it's one of the things on our investigations that you do. Every now and again, something will happen that you can't explain. And that's where, although I remain open-minded, on that day, it did make me question things, because I know for definite, I was the last one down the stairs. I know those lights were definitely off upstairs, and there's no way of turning back on downstairs. We left, and they were definitely off as we crossed the road, and they were definitely off when we started our conversation. And then we looked back up, and the lights were on. And I've got photos of it before and after. I've got to put some photos up on here, hopefully if I can find them throughout my old computer. But it was one of those ones that did make me sit up and take notice that something had happened that I can't explain. Just backtracking a little bit to the kitchen area of the fire station. When we was doing the investigation, we was told that a lot of people didn't like being in the kitchen area. they found that their mood would change whilst they was in there, and also leading up to the stairway at the top. So we set up some cameras and some voice recording equipment down there, and on that voice recording equipment we did pick up some, it sounded like whispering going on, but I couldn't actually rule out that wasn't just that machine picking up our voices throughout the building. I mean, it is a very, very big building, or was a very, very big building, and sound did travel because the corridors were all empty. I know there was fire doors within there that blocked sound out, but yeah, I can't rule that out. But it was interesting that you could pick up certain words from the tapes that we done on the audio recording. Now, listening back to some of the people that use it as a community foundation hall, they didn't like using the kitchen at all, and some of them wouldn't even go in there. They wouldn't use the kitchen because they felt it was quite a dark place, and it was unwelcoming. But also they found that people that were there would often argue in that particular area, so tensions would come very, very high if they were near the kitchen or within that stairwell. But once they removed themselves from that location, their arguments would ease off, and then their anger would go away. But it seemed to be a hotbed of negative sort of energy, that if anyone was near that kitchen or that stairwell with other people, they'd actually end up arguing. And this was repeated to me several times, and people said, oh yeah, I didn't like the kitchen area because every time I went in there we ended up having an argument, or when I walked up to that corridor, I felt like I used to get really, really stressed and angry. So there is something that these dark forces or dark energy can remain in a place from events that have happened in the past, and we don't know everything that went on in that place, but we do know that it wasn't always a happy location. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I know it's a little bit shorter than the normal ones, but I have got another one coming very, very soon. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and give me a subscription. I think the last one got about 600 views, but I've only got about 280 subscriptions, so it'll be really handy if I can get a few more. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.